Hello and welcome to Investment Insight, your clear take on the markets. Let's get started. Today we're strapping in for a deep dive. We've got two really different but equally critical source materials you shared. We're going from like the ground beneath our feet right up into the cloud.
That's right.
First up, we're dissecting this new U.S.-Australia critical minerals deal. It's all about geopolitics, supply chains. Then totally different gear, we're looking at OpenAI's, controversial shift in content policy. So our mission today, cut through the noise, the government talk, the online chatter, figure out the cold, hard economics behind both. And crucially, what does this all mean for U.S. investment and innovation, like right now?
Yeah, it's a great pairing, actually, because fundamentally both are stories about control. Control over physical stuff like rare earths on the world stage.
Right.
And control over digital engagement, user data in the AI world. And in both situations, investors really have to look past the big headlines, the policy noise, and focus hard on the sort of granular details, the corporate reality.
Okay, let's unpack this resource alliance first. For ages, everyone's known relying on China for critical minerals is, a huge weakness for the U.S., right? For manufacturing, defense. So why this big push with Australia now?
Well, the context is really Beijing's near total dominance of the rare earth supply chain. And it's not just digging stuff out of the ground, it's controlling the processing, the refining technology that's key.
Oh, okay.
Our sources basically call this China effectively weaponizing resources. If you don't control the flow of those essential materials, and they're in everything, F-35s, EV batteries, you name it, you're just strategically vulnerable.
So the goal is simple then. Break that monopoly.
Precisely, yeah. This agreement is a direct shot at that, trying to build a secure supply chain based on what they're calling shared values and security among allies.
Makes sense.
And the timing's important, too. President Trump is really championing this right before the big APEC summit. It's designed to give maximum leverage, basically, against China. It's a very public signal. We're serious about decoupling this specific, very sensitive sector.
Okay, intention, clear. But let's dive into the money. The headline was this $1 billion joint fund. What's that actually for? And what does it, enable structurally?
Right, the $1 billion. It's earmarked for two main things. One, funding new mining exploration development down in Australia. Two, setting up refining and processing facilities right here in the U.S.
Okay, U.S.-based processing.
Exactly. And the structural bit is this U.S. designation. These new facilities will be labeled national security assets under the Defense Production Act. The DPA.
The DPA. How big a deal is that designation, really?
Oh, it's potentially huge, maybe even more valuable than the $1 billion itself. The DPA lets the government basically mandate fast-tracking for permits, development, cutting through years of red tape.
With speed.
Yeah, speed and priority. It means guaranteed government backing, structurally. That's the kind of thing you need if you're going to try and compete with China's speed and, their centralized system.
Okay, that's the deal on paper? But then there's the industry reaction. And this is where, policy meets reality, right? What did the actual Australian producers say about this $1 billion?
Yeah, the feedback was pretty telling. Major players like Lynas Rare Earths, they basically said, yeah, we welcome it, but it's just not enough.
Not enough. $1 billion.
Seems like it. The industry sees that billion as like seed money for a problem that needs massive late-stage funding. It's just, it's far too small to really launch even one big critical minerals project that could truly stand up to China's scale and, crucially, their price advantage.
Okay, so if China's low prices are the big wall, what are these producers actually asking for beyond just startup cash?
They need certainty. Long-term certainty. To build these multi-billion-dollar mines and processing plants, they aren't just asking for capital, they're demanding long-term U.S. government purchase commitments.
Purchase commitments, like contracts.
Exactly, and maybe price subsidy policies, too. They need a guaranteed buyer, someone who will buy large volumes at a price that works, even if China undercuts them. Without that long-term contract, the risk is just way too high for private companies.
Right, and we should clarify something else. The Australian PM mentioned an $8.5 billion pipeline. That sounds huge compared to the $1 billion fund. What is that number?
Yeah, that's super important context. At $8.5 billion, it's not secured funding. It's not cash in the bank. It's basically the total estimated value of potential projects that are being looked at or hoping for financing.
So it's more like a wish list.
Kind of, yeah. It shows the potential market size if everything works out perfectly.
Yeah.
But investors absolutely must distinguish between that wish list number and the actual cash committed, which is just the $1 billion for now.
Okay, so let's boil this down for investment folks. The political desire to decouple, strong. The initial money, a bit weak. Where's the opportunity then?
Okay, insight A. The mega trend. Look, the political drive to decouple critical minerals from China, that seems irreversible now. Regardless of the size of this first deal, that policy direction matters structurally. It creates a long-term opportunity. Think diversification.
Diversification where?
Well, focus on non-China sources, Australia, obviously, but also look at Canada, Brazil, maybe Vietnam. And also a really interesting area is urban mining companies, recycling rare earths from old electronics. That's going to be big.
Urban mining. Interesting.
And maybe shorter term, watch US, Japanese, EU companies trying to bring high-performance magnet production back home. That's the end product China really controls.
Got it.
But here's the warning. Insight B, the investment dilemma. There's often a massive gap between, policy goals like decoupling and corporate reality, which is making a profit. So, warning. Don't invest just because you see a headline about government support.
That's a really key warning. So how do you judge if a project is actually viable then, beyond the hype?
You absolutely have to look for actual signed, long-term government offtake agreements, purchase agreements. Think of them like PPAs in the energy sector. They guarantee revenue against China's pricing power.
Can you give an example?
Sure, think back to early solar subsidies. Lots of companies got flashy government grants initially, right? But the ones that failed to lock in long-term contracts to sell their power, many went bankrupt when market prices fell. Only the ones with secured buyers survived and thrived. That's the metric here. That purchase commitment changes the whole risk picture. The $1 billion is like the down payment. The long-term contract is the mortgage guarantee.
That's a fantastic point. The long-term offtake agreement, that's the key metric. Okay, now let's shift to insight C, because sometimes the best opportunity is the one that just bypasses the whole problem, right?
Absolutely. China's power comes from controlling the supply of the materials we currently need. So the real game changer, finding ways to not need those specific materials anymore, that kind of innovation just leapfrogs the entire geopolitical mess.
Technological bypass.
Yeah.
So where should investors be looking for that kind of material independence?
Look at companies developing alternative technologies, stuff that gets rid of the need for rare earths, specifically. Non-rare earth electric motors, things like advanced ferrite motors or wound synchronous motors, they could replace the standard EV motors.
Okay. Motors.
What else? And also, keep a close eye on non-rare earth batteries. Sodium-ion batteries are getting a lot of attention. If a company can get these alternatives commercialized and scaled up quickly, boom, they've just sidestepped the whole supply chain headache.
Okay, so we've talked control over physical resources in the geopolitics game.
Yeah.
Let's pivot now to the digital world. OpenAI is wrestling with its own resource user attention, data, and making a similarly controversial move to, well, secure control and growth.
Yeah, another control play, different domain.
So October 14th, Sam Altman drops this bombshell on X, right? OpenAI is going to allow a much broader range of content, including erotica, starting in December. I mean, wow, that's a huge policy U-turn for a company that built its whole brand on safety first.
It definitely shook things up. But, if you follow the money, the decision starts to make a lot more financial sense.
Okay, let's get the specifics first. This isn't just opening the floodgates, is it? What are the conditions?
No, there are conditions. They're emphasizing strong age gating, identity verification, and critically, it's supposed to be opt-in only for adult users.
Opt-in, okay.
The principle they're pushing is this idea of treat adult users like adults. They're arguing for, responsible management instead of just banning things outright.
But why now? Why this controversial change? OpenAI was kind of the poster child for AI safety, wasn't it?
Pressure. Two kinds, really. Stagnant growth and monetization urgency. Look, they still have a ton of users, like 800 million weekly active users back in September, but that explosive exponential growth, it definitely slowed down in 2025.
Okay, growth slowing. What about the money side?
Their spending on computing power is massive, and their financial goals, they're aiming for an astronomical $125 billion in revenue by 2029.
Wow, $125 billion. For what?
Well, they apparently hit $10 billion in annual recurring revenue, ARR, back in June 2025. So to get from 10 to 125 billion in just a few years, that needs way more than just steady organic growth. It needs special measures to really juice user engagement and, importantly, paid subscriptions. This new content policy, it looks exactly like one of those special measures, designed to make the platform stickier.
And competitors were already doing this kind of thing, right? Like Grok.
Absolutely. Elon Musk's Grok, other chatbots, they'd already rolled out adult modes or similar things. If your rival is pulling in users and keeping them engaged with niche content that you refuse to offer, well, you're basically leaving money on the table and potentially pushing users away.
Okay, makes sense from a business perspective. But the backlash was instant. People like Mark Cuban were really critical, especially about protecting kids. How did Altman defend this?
Yeah, his defense was kind of a mix of pragmatism and high principle, you could say. He basically stated, we are not the elected moral police of the world. He argued their job is to provide freedom of use, manage content responsibly, kind of like how society handles R-rated movies or books. Focus on responsible management, age checks, not absolute prohibition.
Okay, let's translate this into investment ideas. If the AI race isn't just about who has the best tech anymore, what's Insight A telling us? What's the new battleground?
Insight A engagement is king. The competition in AI has really shifted. It's less about just pure technology now, and much more about securing users and the data they generate. This policy, it's a clear play to keep users hooked, maximize how much time they spend, and ultimately how much they're worth.
Wait a second, though. Isn't it risky to treat them just like social media platforms? We've seen those metrics like user numbers collapse super fast for companies like X, right? Shouldn't the focus still be on the underlying tech, the model's capabilities? That seems like the real long-term advantage, the moat.
That's a great point, a really fair challenge. The tech moat is essential, absolutely. But valuation, especially in the near term, is getting tied much more closely to utility and activity. How does this policy drive ARPU, average revenue per user?
Okay, yeah.
Two ways, mainly. First, it directly captures niche users who might actually pay a premium for specialized, maybe adult-focused models or features. Second, and this is probably more important overall, it increases the platform's general stickiness. If OpenAI allows more things, maybe users just stay there for all their AI needs instead of switching to a stricter competitor for some tasks.
So more time spent on the platform.
Exactly. More time equals more chances to upsell them to paid tiers, and critically, it generates more invaluable training data for OpenAI's future models.
Okay, that makes sense. And that stickiness, that increased usage, leads straight into Insight B, which feels like maybe those undeniable investment takeaway here, regardless of what content people are making, the absolute certainty of compute demand.
Yeah, this one feels rock solid. Think about it.
Hey.
Content that needs more processing power, detailed custom images, certainly video generation like their Sora model, plus just the sheer volume of new content. This policy encourages it all leads to an explosion in data traffic and compute needs.
Right.
This just confirms how necessary those massive infrastructure projects are, like OpenAI's rumored $100 billion Stargate data center project. The demand is just clearly there.
Which means the long-term story for the companies building the hardware, the AI chip makers like NVIDIA, AMD, the data center operators, that story looks incredibly solid, doesn't it? The demand for that raw compute power is basically guaranteed by the AI companies' need to fuel this kind of engagement.
It certainly seems that way, but always a but, we have to talk about Insight C, the risks. This kind of growth, especially from controversial content, brings big risks, specifically regulatory risk and brand risk.
Okay, where's the regulatory pressure likely to come from?
Globally, potentially. But Europe, especially the EU, is already working on very strict rules about harmful or illegal AI-generated content. If OpenAI is seen as deliberately enabling or profiting from problematic content, even if it's legal adult content, they could face major compliance headaches, maybe huge fines down the line.
And the brand risk, how serious is that for the overall investment case?
It could be quite critical. This not family-friendly image the label critics are putting on it could really hurt their chances of landing big, stable, lucrative enterprise contracts.
Like selling to big corporations or schools.
Exactly. Imagine a large conservative bank or a global university system looking for an AI partner. They might just shy away from a company that's suddenly associated with explicit content, That could limit OpenAI's growth in those really stable, potentially massive enterprise markets. It's a trade-off. Grab faster user growth now, maybe limit your access to the blue-chip corporate world later.
So just to sort of wrap up the two topics, we've looked at two really different arenas. but both are fundamentally struggles for control, right?
Right.
Driven by fierce competition and huge financial pressures. The U.S.-Australia deal is about controlling physical resources, trying to break a monopoly. OpenAI's shift is about controlling digital attention to hit, frankly, staggering revenue targets.
And the key for investors.
In both cases, you've got to look past the hype, past the policy statements, look for the hard stuff, the actual long-term contracts in minerals, the real user engagement and monetization metrics in AI. Don't just follow the headlines. That really sets up a fascinating final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. We talked a lot about how alternative technologies like new batteries or motors could potentially just neutralize China's dominance in rare earths, a tech bypass for a resource monopoly. So here's the question. If technology can potentially solve geopolitical choke points for physical materials, what other massive global monopoly, maybe one we haven't even thought much about yet, might be secretly vulnerable to a similar kind of technological bypass? Something to mull over. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button.